Hey, welcome back to Against the Grain. My name is Emily, and today I'm joined by Georgia. We're
Hello.
going to be your hosts, and as you can tell, we're not in our usual recording area. Today we're joined by Kerstin Lindquist, who's actually Georgia's mom and a member of ccdelco. And today we're just going to be talking about health and your body, and we're on the set of her podcast, Stressed, which you should definitely listen to.
Absolutely.
So, Kirsten, I was wondering if you could give us a quick overview of what you do and what your typical work day is.
Oh boy, yes. Okay, so I'm Kerstin Lindquist. I have a podcast called Stressed, which blends health science and biblical truth. You can find it on all platforms. I am a health coach. I'm an Emmy award-winning journalist. I was in news for quite a long time. I am an author of 2 books, third one coming out later on this year. I happen to be the chief wellness coach for Kevin Hart and an equity partner in his brand, Vita Hustle. I'm a wellness expert on television, so you'll see me on things like QVC and places like that talking about brands that are all revolving around health, wellness, and faith. What does my typical day look like? That was the other part of that question, right?
Yeah.
Everything on earth. So let's just take for today, for example. It was kind of typical. So I was on late last night on television late last night talking about one of the products that I represent, which is called Mary Ruth, which is a vitamin supplement. This morning I was on back on QVC talking about another vitamin brand that I often will help educate people on. I was at Tuesday morning prayer, where you should all go with my kids. Usually I would drive them in, but I met them there. I had meetings with brands. So I will take on different brands on social media. I have about 300,000 followers on social media. So brands will come to me and ask that I promote their products, but I'll only promote ones that are within my standards and are within health and faith. So I'll take meetings and we'll do things like that. I wrote a blog and a newsletter, which I put out twice a week that has links to a bunch of these products and different health science and biblical truth data. Today was all about journaling. Last week was all about sleep. So we kind of go back and forth. So I wrote that, put that out there. I was back at QBC with another hit with Vita Hustle. So I was talking about that and podcasting. So our podcast is on twice a week. So it's kind of a beast. So we do a ton of podcasts and there's a lot of clipping. And we put out about 250 shorts on YouTube every single month. So there is a lot of content creation that goes into that. So a lot of my day is taken up with that. And then my most important job is mom to 3. So lots of kids, and I also have a husband and 2 dogs, and 4
Chicken.
4 chickens, 2 ducks, and a gecko.
We don't like the duck. Wow. That's a lot.
It's a lot. There's a lot of overwhelm, but I've kind of figured out how to manage it in my 48 years.
You say health science and biblical truth is one like big aspect. It's what your podcast is about. It's what you're typically pursuing in QVC. What made you want to pursue that?
So I was in news for a long time, ABC, NBC, Fox. I then went over to QVC when Georgia was 1. We moved from California to Pennsylvania, and I took the job at QVC, which was fantastic. I got to share my story. QVC was a wonderful place to work. It's a corporation, but they allow me to talk about Jesus all the time, which was amazing. I'd be on TV for 4 hours at a time, presenting every different product under the sun, but I could still talk about my kids, which were the most important thing, and my Lord, which is the most important thing. Over my 14 years there, a lot happens in 14 years. The biggest thing that happened is my mom got sick with dementia very young. So it was a very long goodbye. Dementia's a form of Alzheimer's, or Alzheimer's a form of dementia. As she was getting sick, and she was very young when that happened, it was kind of a wake up moment for me. I ended up going back to school for nutrition to be a health coach to try and not only help others avoid the fate that she had, but also myself, because I'm a carrier of a gene called APOE4. So I have 1 copy of the Alzheimer's gene. Does not mean I'm going to get it. Does not mean that I'm going to have the same fate as my mother, but it kind of stacks some of the odds a little bit, which means I really have to pay attention to my lifestyle. Everybody should pay attention to their lifestyle, but I definitely do. So I went back to school for a year. I became a certified health coach, and that's when the Lord really pressed in on me that the most important thing for me to be sharing with others, because your biggest tool is to share with others. The biggest thing you have is vulnerability and sharing with others, was going to be health science and biblical truth. So helping others stay healthy, especially brain healthy. stress being one of a big part of it, but then doing it through the lens of faith, which is one of the 5 main components to your wellness: how you eat, how you sleep, how you move, relationships, and spirituality. They're all very, very important, spirituality being very, very important. So as I was at QVC, I started to develop their wellness department. So helped bring in more products that were wellness focused, things for exercise, things for supplements. And as I started making my way through those 14 years, it became abundantly clear that I needed to be presenting and using my voice only in that manner, not also selling shoes and jewelry. And I famously talk about the fact that I sold dirt at one point and things like that. So it was a pivot. My purpose was always the same, was always to share my story and help others and move people towards the Lord. But the Lord started changing my calling within those 14 years to make it more health focused.
That's great. It's wonderful. So the Bible talks about your body being a temple of the Holy Spirit. What does that look like for you in real life and practically and not just as like
Right. That's a great question. For me, it looks I throw it back at others because I am a health coach. So, and happen to be Kevin Hart's health coach, but I also health coach people who aren't Kevin Hart. And so in my life, it looks like helping others recognize how to honor their bodies for the Lord. And I think that the first step in that is a mindset change. When it comes to your health, you have to change your mindset that you really don't have control over everything. Control to me isn't even a biblical word. When we say that the Lord is in control, I don't think that it's the same constructs that we have here on earth as it is in heaven. So you need to surrender everything about your body, how you care for your health, your longevity, chronic conditions, all of that to the Lord. And it's all written in the Bible how we're supposed to care for ourselves. It literally goes back to Genesis, telling us that you are to eat the seeds and the plants. And then later on in Genesis 9, saying that you're to be eating living things, that will also be your food. The Bible literally tells us how to care for our crops, that we need to leave them fallow so that they can recover, so that we can get nutrients out of the soil so that that can feed us. The Bible tells us that we continue to move our bodies. The Bible tells us that we need to wake up early and pray. The Bible does not say anything about retiring and stopping serving and moving. So if we go back to the Bible, it teaches us how to care for our body. There is nowhere in the Bible where it says you should eat from a package. There's nowhere in the Bible that it says that you should sit for long periods of time in front of a device or in front of anything that you are focusing on more than the Lord. So it's so much more than just exercise and keep yourself healthy. It's really going back to scripture as to how you should be caring for your body, and that that also equates to how we care for our land and how we care for our crops and our animals and our daily habits.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important considering we're in a world full of like fast food and package and processed things. How do you as a health coach like navigate like the conditions of our world with all the fast paced everything and not waking up early in the morning and praying and eating Doritos every 5 minutes? Like how do you navigate that without being like legalistic and making other people feel guilty?
So legalism is a big thing for me because my third book that's coming out is called Change Your Morning, Change Your Life. And it's 50 devotionals. And it dives into something that I help people work on in journaling, which is called the first 10. It's 10 questions to ask yourself and ask the Lord every single morning. And I also speak on stages across the country. And one of the big subjects is a morning routine. And I give people kind of an 8-step morning routine that's a great way to start your day. And I always point out when I'm giving that keynote speech that I don't want this to be a legalistic practice. I want your relationship with the Lord to be yours. It's a relationship. Things are going to change and you have to give yourself grace. But I think when we're talking about the standard American diet, the average human on this earth, who, like you said, is eating Doritos, I was going to say no shade on Doritos, but tons of shade on Doritos, who is in front of a device all the time, who is not moving, You have to have somewhat of a rigid step by step in the beginning. It takes 21 days to make a habit. And then after that, you can kind of start to mold it and you kind of retrained your brain. It takes 21 days to break up with sugar and actually change your taste buds. It takes at least 21 days to start training your muscles to have that memory that, oh, you know what? I like this exercise and I want to keep doing it. So in the beginning, you have to be a little bit legalistic about it. You have to stay on the path. So in terms of the journaling that I do and the morning routine I do when I start you on this, I want you to hold tight to this for about a month. And then once it's become a part of you, you can start to mold it into how it works for you. And then once you've gotten to that point, there's not that fear that you're going to go back to, gosh, we're just Doritos. Go back to Doritos nonstop all the time because your body and your soul and your spirit starts to remember, I feel so much better when I'm doing things the other way.
What's like a habit or a food swap that you'd recommend to a teenager who wants to start like changing like how they like are? Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
So you're all so different. So I can give you so here's one of my kind of rules that I try to give people. It's called the rule of fives. The first things what you should always be eating are whole foods from quality soil. Quality soil is hard to find these days, which is why we have to back to the Bible with how we care for our crops. But we kind of know to look for organic and regenerative organic whenever possible, eating local. So whenever you can shop at a mom and pop grocery store or a farmer's market, it's better because it's local. So that's the quality soil part, right? Whole foods are things that you know where they grew. You can visualize it. A blueberry, a carrot. Like, I know where that grew. Or where they grew or moo, like I try to make it rhyme, but where they lived, right? It is a cow. It is an egg. It is fish. Like, I know where those things lived. So if you can visualize where your food grew or mooed, you're good. Like, I'm going to say you have a pass and you can eat it. But then people go, well, what about a package? Our world is package. And ideally, I would never have you eat from a package. And I'm sure that the teens of America are going, are you kidding me? How could I never eat from a package? AKA Doritos. So when you eat from a package, I want you to turn it over and I want you to look at the ingredients. And I want there to be 5 ingredients or less, just 5, not 25, unless it's a protein powder. That's a whole different story because those are real ingredients. 5 ingredients or less, and you know where they grew or mooed. So you know where they lived and you can explain them. And there's 5 grams of sugar or less. That's the rule of fives. Real sugar isn't bad, you guys. It's when you have excess sugar mixed with fake foods, the preservatives, the extra ingredients. Those are what's going to keep you chronically ill, inflamed, make your brain not work the right way, all of that. If you're somebody who's having a really hard time with food, you're having a hard time keeping a weight that you feel is okay, you have breakouts consistently, you're not sleeping well, you're bloated, you're not pooping, we talk about poop on this? Is that okay? All of those things. I will have you cut out, and yes, teenagers do this as well. I will have you cut out dairy for 2 weeks and see how that will impact you. And after that, I'll have you cut out gluten for 2 weeks because both of those things are the things that are probably causing a number of those things. And then we'll reassess. We can bring things back in after we know what's causing this.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm not gonna like trying to get into your client's personal information because that's confidential. But like I know there's been instances in like the Bible, like, where people have gone and made the excuse like, oh, if God wanted me to be healthy or whatever, he would have just made me healthy. Like I know some people who are like that. How do you navigate like clients or like other people who just use like God as an excuse for their health and wellness?
I would say those are the people, if that comes up as an quote unquote excuse, that I'm putting down all of the tools of how you eat and how you sleep and how you move, and I'm leaning into the relationships and spirituality part. Because their relationship with their Lord and their idea of being a Christian needs to be reformed.
Mhm.
That's where we need to lean in because that's not the relationship that the Lord has with you. We have free will. Things sadly fell apart in the garden, and it kind of all started with food when you look at it, right? With the apple. And since then, the Lord it's been an arc from Genesis all the way to Revelation. The Lord is trying to get us back and wants to come. He wants to be a part of our story and in our lives from the garden all the way to New Jerusalem. He's not playing games with you. He's not saying, "Well, if you try harder," or it's a relationship. He's your father. He wants what's best for you, and he's waiting for you to surrender these idols. That's what food really is sometimes. That's what constant scrolling, on, social media or not moving your body. These are idols that are bigger than the Lord, more important than the Lord in your life, and he really wants to break you of that and allow you to surrender to him and have that relationship.
I like how you mentioned how food can be an idol, like social media, and I think that's a really big part of a lot of teenagers' lives today. What like advice would you give to a teenager that's keeping food as an idol, social media as an idol, body image as their idol? Like what advice would you give to them to break free of that?
So one of the questions in the first 10 that I have you ask yourself every single day, it's called broken idols. And it's taken from the visualization of when the Lord was in the temples and or he was instructing them to go into the temples and take down every idol and smash them to the ground. And I love that visualization of taking these so in that day, they were actual idols. They were praying to actual idols, right? And you had to take them and you can imagine that the floor which was made of stone and these idols were smashed to pieces so that they could not pray to these idols anymore. And I have you every single morning write down what those are in your life. An idol is anything that is bigger in your life than the Lord. And I would say for 99% of Americans, and not just teenagers, food is more important and more of a focus in their lives than the Lord is. That's not to guilt you or to shame you. It's just to understand that the relationship that we have with food has changed in the United States specifically because of marketing dollars. And the same thing is happening with social media. It's where the money is how it's getting into our brains and it's changing the relationship. I work in a program called Fast to Faith, which pairs fasting and faith together. And we go by the principle and the truth that the only true nourishment you need is the Lord. It's all you need. And it's true. The science is, I think, 364 days is the longest that somebody went without food. You need trace minerals. You need seawater. You need water. You can't go more than a few days without water. But actual food isn't something that we have to have 3 times a day, let alone 8 times a day. If you don't have dinner, you're gonna be okay. But if you don't have dinner, think about how much you think about not having dinner. Think about if you could think about the Lord that much. And you don't have to, but even if you think about the Lord half as much as you think about what am I having for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the only true nourishment you need is from the Lord. And it's the same thing with anything else that you're holding as an idol. Oh, I have to check my social media feed. Oh, I have to snap that person back. Oh, whatever it is, once again, giving yourself grace because you have been programmed, friend, by this country and where the money is. So it's not saying it's your fault, but the true nourishment in any of those areas, whether it's food, whether it's your idea of yourself, whether it's your self worth, it all only comes from the Lord. And you have to keep surrendering all of these idols, that's why I do it every single morning, back to Him and smash them to the ground so that He can continue to be larger in your life.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point. Are there any, like, for those of who are listening, are there any key passages from scripture that have really helped you along in your journey with health and wellness that our audience can take away with?
My biggest, I kind of go through seasons with different scriptures that are really speaking to me. In the former podcast studio, Esther 4:14, perhaps, which is paraphrased into perhaps this is the moment for which you've been created,
Mhm.
is one of my life verses just because Queen Esther, there was so much fear in her life, and I think that fear fear in what I do and how I health coach is a big, big thing. Because if your body is in consistent fear and worry and anxiety, it can't be healthy. You can't be healthy on a cellular level and also full of fear and worry. And I know that this generation and my generation at 48 are full of fear and worry all the time. And think about this queen who her fear was literal death. Like she was going to be put to death. The things that we're afraid, we're not going to get into college. We're not going to have enough money. This person's not going to like me, whatever it might be. That's not death. She was literally had a fear of death and she still did it because she knew that the Lord was using her in that moment. So that's always a big one for me. The one that I love right now is Jeremiah 33:3. Ask and I will tell you remarkable secrets you do not know about things to come. Um, I want, and what we're talking about a lot on the podcast and in my speaking and the theme right now with the guests that I have on a lot is closed doors are things that we should be thankful for. If something's not working out for you, if how you thought, where you thought you were going to go, the friendship you thought you were going to have, the relationship you thought you were going to have, the athletic whatever you were going to do, those closed doors we need to be thankful for because it's the Lord pushing us into the right direction. And he's pushing you then towards the doors that are supposed to be open for him. And only he knows. And he's not necessarily going to show you the next step. You just have to have the faith, the blind faith to follow after him, to follow hard after him. So that one's a big one for me right now as well. And with the people that I coach, it's funny because whether you're coming to me because you want to lose weight or you're anxious all the time or you can't sleep or whatever it might be, it literally goes all back to the same foundation. And that's that foundation of your relationships, your spirituality, how you eat, how you sleep, how you move. They're all connected.
Really good. Yeah. Another passage I have to go along with that that's really encouraging that I think all of our listeners should read if you're dealing with issues like this. Psalm 139. I have the whole thing memorized. Definitely recommend getting into that specifically. Verse 14 and 15 it says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yes.
Wonderful are your works. And it just talks about how like God made you like specifically on purpose for a purpose. So if anyone listening to this is dealing with any like body image issues, anything dealing with health or anything, I definitely recommend diving into that
Mhm.
passage. And do you have any other questions?
Um, if you had one message to our audience, like teenagers specifically, in regards to health science, biblical truth, what would it be?
We know from science and research that people who have a sense of purpose are happier. Like there's been actual studies done. So if you have a sense of purpose, you're happier. And then they equated that to longevity and actually live longer. So when you have a sense of purpose you live longer. In my field, health coaching, it's all about longevity and not just living longer, but living longer healthy. I don't want to live to be 120 but not really know anything past the age of 80 or 90. So if we know that having a sense of purpose keeps you healthy, if we do the addition that way, having a sense of purpose keeps you healthy, then figuring out your identity in the Lord and your purpose is something that's super important for you to work on. Not figuring out necessarily, how do I make people like me? How do I feel better about my body? How do but what's your purpose? What does the Lord have you for? Here for? Your purpose will always have some type of tie to other people. So it'll always involve people. We are pack animals at our root. So it's always going to involve people. And I believe your purpose stays the same throughout your life. It's your calling that changes. The Lord is going to change where he calls you to go, but you're always kind of going to have the same purpose. It can take a long time to figure that out, but if you want to focus on one thing to try and keep yourself healthy, to live long and full of joy, and make your cells happy, which is going to equate to your body feeling better and you feeling better, then dive into what's your purpose and then allow the Lord to move your calling as you go through your teens and then your 20s and your 30s and beyond.
Mhm. It's really good.
Wonderful.
I think that's all we have.
That's what we
Thank
got.
you for jumping on.
Thank you for having me. You guys are wonderful.
Thanks for letting us use your space.
Anytime.
Wonderful.
It's great. And make sure you are coming out to youth group on Wednesday nights, services on Sundays. I'm sure we've got lots of events planned in the next couple months that you guys can come to. And yeah, that's all we have.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for watching
Thank
and
you
listening.
guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.